Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
It was a surprise meeting in Scotland. United States President Donald Trump met with Ursula von der Leyen. She is the president of the European Commission, which is the government for the European Union, or EU. The meeting happened at a golf resort. After they talked, they announced some huge news. They made a new trade deal between the US and the EU. This agreement is historic and will change a lot of things. For a long time, there were problems between the US and Europe. Many people worried about a trade war. A trade war is when countries put big taxes on each other's products. This is very bad for companies and can make everyday things more expensive. This new deal stops a big trade war from starting. This is very important for the American and European economies. President Trump and President von der Leyen shook hands for the news reporters. President Trump said it was a very big and powerful deal, maybe the biggest deal ever made. President von der Leyen said the agreement brings stability. This helps businesses know what to expect in the future. She said the talks were very hard, but they finally made an agreement. This deal changes the rules for trade. There will be a new 15% tax on most things Europe sells to America. This tax is called a tariff. Because of this, business between the US and Europe will be different. The old ways are finished. A serious fight was stopped, but big changes are now starting. 2. The big deal. The new agreement between the US and Europe creates many new rules for trade. The most important rule is a new tax. The United States will now put a 15% tax on most things that come from Europe. This is a big change. Before this deal, the taxes were much lower. This new tax will affect many products that Americans buy, like cars from Germany, cheese from France, and clothes from Italy. Because of the tax, these things will now cost more money in American stores. In return for this new tax rule, Europe made some very big promises to the United States. First, European countries promised to buy a lot of American energy. They will spend $750 billion on American oil and gas over the next 3 years. This is a very large order and will help American energy companies a lot. Second, Europe promised to invest $600 billion in the United States. This means European companies will put money into American businesses and factories. This investment is meant to create more jobs in America. However, the new 15% tax is not for every product. The leaders agreed that some important things will have zero tax. This is good news for certain industries. For example, planes and parts for planes will have no tax. This helps both American and European companies that build aircraft. Some types of medicines will also have no tax. This is important so that people can still get the medicine they need without a higher price. Leaders from both sides hope to add more products to this zero-tax list in the future. But the deal did not solve every problem. Before this new agreement, the U.S. government under President Donald Trump had put a very high tax on steel and aluminum from Europe. That tax is 50%. This new deal did not change that rule. The high tax on European steel and aluminum will continue for now. European leaders are not happy about this, but they agreed to it to make the larger deal happen. They hope to talk about this difficult issue again later. 3. The hard talks. Getting the deal was not easy. The talks between the United States and the European Union were very difficult for a long time. In late May, President Trump was not happy. He said the talks were going nowhere. He was very frustrated with the slow progress. Because he was not happy, President Trump made a big threat. He said he would put a 50% tax on all European goods. This was a very high tax. It worried many leaders in Europe. A tax this big would be very bad for their economies. It was a serious problem for everyone, and it could start a big trade war. European leaders knew they had to do something fast. The president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, called President Trump on the phone. She told him they could work together to find a solution. This phone call helped to calm the situation and keep the talks going. After the call, President Trump changed his plan a little. He said the tax would be 30%, not 50%. This was better, but it was still a very high tax. And there was a deadline. The tax would start on August 1. The leaders had to find an agreement before that day. The time was short. The final meeting was at a golf resort in Scotland. President Trump was there. Ursula von der Leyen traveled to Scotland to meet him. It was the last chance to make a deal. Even on the day of the meeting, President Trump said there was only a 50-50 chance for an agreement. Some important points were still not solved. The two leaders met for about 40 minutes. The meeting was very tense at the start. They both had to work very hard to agree on the final points. It was a difficult conversation. But in the end, they found a way. Just before the deadline, they finally made a deal and stopped a trade war. 4. Money and politics. When the deal was announced, the world of money reacted fast. The news was good for financial markets. In Europe, stock markets went up. This meant that the value of big companies grew. For example, stock markets in Germany and France saw good gains. In the United States, stock markets also went up. People who invest money felt positive. They believed the deal would be good for business. The value of Europe's money, the euro, also grew a little stronger. These were all signs that people were not worried about a trade war anymore. In politics, European leaders shared their thoughts. Most of them felt relief. They were happy that they avoided a big economic fight with the United States. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz welcomed the agreement. He said it was very important for Germany's economy. which sells many things to other countries. He was especially happy for the German car industry. The new tax was high, but it was much lower than the one President Trump threatened before. Other leaders had mixed feelings. They were happy to have a deal, but they were also worried. Ireland's Prime Minister, Michael Martin, said the new 15% tax would be a problem. He explained that it would make European products more expensive in the US. This could make trade more challenging for Irish and other European businesses. The Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Dick Schoof, agreed. He said that zero tax would have been the best result. However, he also said that this deal was the best they could get in a difficult situation. The Italian government said the deal was important because it brought stability. So, the main feeling was relief. A trade war was stopped. But there was also a clear worry for the future. The new tax was a big change from the past. Before, the tax was very low. Now, European companies had to think about this new, higher cost. They worried that Americans would buy fewer European cars, foods, and other goods. The future was safer, but business with America would now be more expensive. 5. Winners and losers. This big trade deal changes many things. For some companies and people, the changes are good. For others, the changes are bad. There are clear winners and losers in America and in Europe. American energy companies are some of the biggest winners. Europe promised to buy $750 billion of American energy. This includes oil, nuclear fuel, and a special type of gas called liquefied natural gas. This is a huge amount of money. It will help these companies grow and hire more workers. The United States will also get a lot of new investment from Europe. European companies will spend $600 billion to build new businesses in America. This investment will create many new jobs for American people. Some American companies, like those that make airplane parts, also win because they can sell to Europe with zero tax. However, many people will lose because of the deal. American shoppers are one of the biggest groups. They will have to pay more for products from Europe because of the new 15% tax. Things like European cars, cheese, wine, and clothes will all become more expensive. For an average family, this could mean paying over $1,000 more each year. European companies that sell to the U.S. also face problems. Their products are now more expensive for Americans to buy. This means they will probably sell less and make less profit. Some companies may decide to move their factories and jobs to the United States. The news is especially bad for European steel and aluminum makers. The deal did not change the very high 50% tax on their products. This makes it very difficult for them to compete in the American market. For them, the hard talks did not bring a good result. 6. A new kind of trade. This big agreement with Europe is part of a new plan for American trade. President Donald Trump has a special name for his idea: reciprocal trade. The word reciprocal means that two sides do the same thing for each other. President Trump believes that trade must be fair. If another country puts a tax on American products, he thinks the United States should put the same tax on their products. For a long time, he has said that other countries were not fair to the U.S. He wants to reduce the American trade deficit. A trade deficit happens when a country buys more from other countries than it sells to them. This deal with the European Union shows his plan in action. But it is not the first one. The Trump administration made a similar deal with Japan just before the EU agreement. Japan agreed to invest a lot of money in the U.S. In return, the U.S. tax on Japanese goods was not as high as President Trump first wanted. The U.S. also made a new agreement with the United Kingdom. This shows a clear pattern. The president prefers to make deals with one partner at a time. This method is a big change from the past. For many years, the world's countries used a different system. Many nations would meet and agree on one set of rules for trade. This is called a multilateral system. President Trump's new way is called bilateral because it is just between two sides, like the U.S. and the EU. Not everyone agrees on this new kind of trade. Supporters say it is a better way to do business. They believe it is good for American workers and helps the U.S. economy. They see these deals as a victory for America because other countries promise to invest more money in the U.S. But many critics are worried. They say these deals will make life more expensive. The new 15% tax means Americans will pay more for European cars, food, and other products. These experts think that changing the old system will cause problems for the global economy. They believe that everyone loses when countries stop working together on trade. 7. What comes next? The big meeting in Scotland is over, and the leaders announced a new deal. But this is only the beginning of a long process. The agreement is just a plan. It is not a final law yet. Many people must now work hard to make the plan real. There is a lot of work to do in the next few weeks and months. First, lawyers from the United States and the European Union need to write the full agreement. This is a very detailed job. They must write down every rule and every number from the plan. Every word must be correct. This document will be very long. After the lawyers are finished, politicians will read the document. They need to understand what it means for their countries. This part of the process is very important and takes a lot of time. The deal is not finished until all European countries agree. The European Commission must show the final plan to the leaders of the 27 EU member states. Each country will study the deal. They will think about how the new 15% tax will affect their businesses and their people. A country that sells many cars to the U.S. might feel differently than a country that sells a lot of food. All the countries must say yes. If one country says no, it can create a big problem for the whole deal. The plan also leaves many important questions without answers. For example, the EU promised to invest $600 billion in the U.S. But where will this money go? Which American industries will get it? The EU also promised to buy $750 billion of American energy. How will this happen? The leaders also did not decide about the high 50% tax on steel and aluminum. They said maybe they can change it later, but nobody knows for sure. The details for many other products are still not clear. This deal brings more certainty than before. Businesses were very worried about a big trade war. Now they have a clear number, a 15% tax. But the future is not completely safe. President Trump said that if Europe does not keep its promises, the U.S. can increase the taxes again. Everything depends on the next steps. Everyone is watching and waiting to see if this big plan can become a real working agreement. The story of this trade deal is not over. 8. A new world. This agreement changed everything between the United States and the European Union. Their economic relationship is now completely different. For many years, they traded with each other using old, shared rules. This new deal ends that time. It is a big moment in history, and for many people, it was a surprise. The old way of doing business is finished, and a new one has started. This was a key part of President Trump's plan to change how America trades with the world. He wanted to move away from the systems that were in place for more than 50 years and create something new. The deal stopped a very bad trade war, which was good news. Leaders on both sides were happy about that because a trade war would hurt everyone. But the agreement also started a new system. In this system, there are higher costs. Most things from Europe now have a new 15% tax when they come to the U.S. This makes trade more expensive for businesses and for people who buy the products. It is not free trade. It is a new kind of managed trade. This means governments are more involved in setting prices and rules instead of letting the market decide. It is a new chapter for the world's two largest economies. This change is not just for America and Europe. Other countries around the world are watching carefully. They see a new model for how to do business. Before, many countries worked together to make trade rules in big groups. Now, the U.S. is making separate deals with single countries or groups like it did with Japan and the United Kingdom. This shows a big shift in global trade. It might create more competition as countries try to get the best deal for themselves. The idea of every country following the same set of rules is becoming weaker. Power and negotiation are now more important than ever. The world of trade will not go back to how it was. This agreement marks the end of an era. For a long time, the main goal was to make trade easier and cheaper between all nations. This deal shows a different way of thinking. Now, the focus is on what is fair for one country, even if it makes things more expensive for others. This creates a lot of uncertainty. Companies do not know what rules will come next. A new world for international business has begun, and no one knows exactly what it will look like. Who do you think really won in this trade deal and why?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.